So I'm going to just come back to treaties real briefly. The adoption of the TPNW, it was historic for those of us, especially those that were relatively new to the peace movement. It's been 50 years since the NPT entered into force, and we were planning to have a delegation from Scotland attend a review conference, which has obviously now been postponed, and that's why we're sort of making this video just now. The UK government tells us that they're committed to the NPT as the best route to multilateral disarmament, and that the TPNW conflicts with the NPT. So can you tell us a little bit about like the ICANN's view on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the latest and it's the one that's kind of stuck. The argument that we've heard from the detractors of the TPNW, and then they were talking about this even before the treaty was negotiated. But it's kind of one of these. Yeah, it's really a spurious argument. I mean, I think even before the treaty was negotiated, there was these indications or hints that there could be some legal incompatibility between the TPNW and the NPT. And I don't think you'd find a legal expert out there who would support that assertion. And now, so now that's kind of fallen away, and now they're saying that the TPNW, the way it conflicts is that it might distract from the NPT. Countries would become so excited by the TPNW that they're no longer interested in the NPT, or that the TPNW will lead states to leave the NPT, actually, which I think is I mean, it's a bit tiresome to have to kind of respond to these arguments in general, because they have really no basis in fact or reality. I mean, I think if you look at the states that participated in the negotiation of the TPNW, which is over 130 states, I think, and I think all of those states are countries in very good standing with the NPT's obligations, and all of those states were, when they talked about the need for developing a treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons, one of the main motivations for most of those states, and what we heard quite a lot, bilaterally, but also I think what they said in their statements, to the world at the UN, was that the importance of having a treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons was because it would complement and strengthen the NPT and restore confidence in the vision of nuclear disarmament, which is of course one of the three main purposes of the NPT. So it's kind of it's hard to kind of really take that argument seriously, because it just seems to be something that they will put out there to distract from their own lack of implementation of their own obligations under the NPT, which has really been, I mean, to say it's flagging is kind of, to put it mildly, it's been quite moribund over the last couple of decades. So yeah, and we're not terribly concerned by these arguments. I mean, the UK government is not the only government to say that the TPNW and the NPT are at odds. There's, I think, all the nuclear weapon states will say that as well. But we take heart from the fact that if there's one thing that unites the 5 nuclear weapon states who are part of the NPT and the 4 that are outside, all of them agree that they dislike the TPNW. So if we know that they want to keep their nuclear weapons, and we know that they're all afraid of the TPNW, then I think we can take some confidence that we're doing something right.
Great. So you kind of touched on it, but do you see the nuclear states parties of the NPT who are boycotting the TPNW, do you see them taking any steps to fulfill their obligations under the NPT?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to distinguish between the different pillars of the NPT, and you often hear this by states themselves at the NPT, but also academics and others that are writing about the NPT often hear that there's been this imbalanced implementation of the NPT. So you have the NPT is quite famously referred to as having 3 pillars. So nuclear disarmament is only one of those 3 pillars. The other 2 are non-proliferation and the peaceful usage of nuclear energy. And I think there seems to be a consensus that the other 2 pillars have been more or less successful. Obviously, the non-proliferation pillar, has seen some setbacks with states developing nuclear weapons, but by and large, we have 9 nuclear weapon states today, and that's better than what it looked like, possibly could happen in the 50s prior to the NPT was joined, where you might see lots of states with nuclear weapons. So in that sense, it's been successful. But in the disarmament pillar, even the nuclear weapon states themselves would probably agree that it has been flagging a little bit, although they would disagree with why that has happened. So yeah, we don't really see, or it's not really ICANN's view solely, but there has been shockingly little done on implementation of NPT obligations as it concerns nuclear disarmament. You have the 64-point action plan. You had the 13 steps. Prior to that, these agreements that were made at review conferences that were accepted by all states, and have now the status of the 64-point action plan, which was a hard-fought victory of the 2010 review conference. The status of that plan is uncertain, because what you have is the situation where the nuclear weapon states seem to be moving the goalposts quite a lot about what constitutes, whether those were even obligations or whether those were just advisory in some way, which of course is not what they were saying at the time, and it's not the way that action plan is viewed by most legal authorities. So yeah, it's now what they're talking about is at least the United States is talking about is creating the environment for nuclear disarmament. So it's this constant moving of the goalposts about what constitutes what is necessary before progress on the NPT's obligations becomes possible, or nuclear disarmament becomes possible. So yeah, it's been very little movement on that front, and I think that kind of only underlines why the TPNW is so necessary and why it's generated so much interest, is because you have states that are no longer interested in kind of waiting and hoping for the nuclear weapon states to amongst themselves kind of agree to nuclear disarmament, and now taking it upon themselves to provoke the issue, push it forward, set the agenda themselves, I should say.